My name is Julie. My mother's name was Susan. She was killed in a car accident with my father and they're both dead.
Ah, exposition. The bane of many a writer. Give too little, and the audience is confused. Give too much, and...
Function of the one is now to return to the source, allowing a temporary dissemination of the code.
Previously, I made a video on 7 ways to do bad exposition. Today, we're talking about rules for good exposition. I'm Jonathan Stokes, and this is Raising the Stakes, Essays About Story, which is a field of study created by Aristotle in his Poetics from 335 BC. Oh, right. Too much exposition. Let's get into it.
Extinction of the entire human race.
Oh my god, is this guy going to always use Indiana Jones to explain everything in his videos? Yes, I am. Get used to it. In Raiders of the Lost Ark, audiences in 1981 spent 15 minutes with Indy without knowing any expository information about him whatsoever. Only after a jaw-dropping escape involving a boa constrictor did Spielberg and writer Lawrence Kasdan finally show Professor Jones teaching at Marshall College and begin spoon-feeding the audience some exposition. In other words, the audience was practically begging for information about Indy before Kasdan provided it. Imagine if Spielberg had swapped these scenes in the edit. What if Raiders of the Lost Ark had started off at Marshall College with a long dissertation on the Ark of the Covenant?
And gave you the exact location of the Well of the Souls.
Many, many movies make this mistake, starting with plot rather than character, and they feel far more expositional. For instance, here's another movie that takes place in Egypt.
Beautiful.
The Mummy starts with over 2 minutes of voiceover exposition.
Death is a doorway.
And still talking.
My
main rule for exposition is this. Withhold as much information from the audience as you can, for as long as possible. Pique their curiosity and make them lean in. Put another way, never give the audience a piece of information before they ask for it. This leads us to...
your mission, should you choose to accept it.
Give the least plot exposition possible, especially in Act 1. When Ethan Hunt receives an assignment, it's on a very short recorded message that will self-destruct in 5 seconds. When Bond gets an assignment, it's the bare minimum necessary to kick off the plot. Go to a certain location and find a certain bad guy. That's it. To give the audience anything more is not only unnecessary in Act 1, but risks overwhelming the audience with information they are not likely to retain anyway.
Are you ready to get back to work?
With pleasure, M.
Our mantra works here too. Give the least amount of backstory possible, and withhold backstory as long as you can. In the critically acclaimed show The Americans, Kerry Russell's character is a spy who is literally forbidden to reveal her backstory. So it is rewarding when she reveals her name and birthplace near the very end of the pilot episode.
My mother was a bookkeeper for the local party committee.
This tiny bit of exposition becomes a massive moment of character growth. She finally loves her husband enough to defy the KGB's orders by sharing her actual name.
My name was Nadezhda.
Clint Eastwood's character, in The Line of Fire, is an elegant example of how to seed and withhold backstory. In Act 1, we learn that Clint was a Secret Service bodyguard who failed to prevent JFK's assassination. Throughout Act 2, we see how this failure has haunted Clint for decades, affecting every aspect of his work and home life. But it is not until Act 3 that Clint himself finally opens up about what happened that fateful day in 1963.
If only I reacted, I could have taken that shot.
In The Line of Fire is a story of redemption. In the final climax, Clint leaps in front of the assassin's bullet, saves the president, and redeems his self-respect. By withholding as much backstory from the audience as possible, for as long as possible, you can create a sense of mystery that keeps the reader glued to the screen or to the page. In many stories, backstory is overrated. Some of the most iconic characters in movie history have no backstory. 12 Angry Men is an incredibly gripping courtroom drama with fully realized characters who have almost zero backstory. The hero, Henry Fonda, has no backstory whatsoever. It is not until the last line of the movie that we even learn his name.
What's your name? Davis.
Ryan Gosling's character has no name in Drive, but his actions tell us everything we need to know about his character. This guy has no name in Fight Club. This lady has no name in her iconic role in The 7-Year Itch. This guy is literally called the man with no name in movies like A Fistful of Dollars, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and he has no backstory whatsoever until A Coffin Full of Dollars. Wall-E has no real backstory, or even dialogue, but that does not prevent audiences from caring deeply about his journey.
Wow.
I'm not anti-backstory. I just think we writers and producers sometimes rely on backstory when we don't necessarily need it to tell a great story. In 1946, Lajos Egri wrote in The Art of Dramatic Writing that exposition is best revealed through conflict.
And you! Friendless, brainless, helpless, hopeless! Do you want me to send you back to where you were? Unemployed in Greenland?
If you've ever seen The Princess Bride with a live audience, this line always gets a laugh. But we actually learn a tremendous amount about all three characters and their relationships in the space of this single sentence of dialogue. Former agent and film producer Josh Donnan once taught me this lesson. Let's say these two characters were just out for a Sunday drive and had the following conversation.
I'm a cybernetic organism, living tissue over a metal endoskeleton.
Who sent you?
You did. 35 years from now, you reprogrammed me to be your protector here, in this time.
This should be a lot to swallow, right? But because this conversation is delivered after fleeing one of the most heart-stopping action sequences in cinematic history, the conversation feels much more plausible. The Terminator 2 audience has just had their minds blown seeing the Terminator save John instead of killing him, and they're dying to get some answers. This is similar to rule number 1, character before plot, and James Cameron plays this moment beautifully. Only give expository information once the audience absolutely demands it.
I say hello, pal, sort of friendly, and just because I say Niagara Falls, Niagara Falls!
One way to take the stink off of exposition is to imbue it with a strong emotion. When a character has a strong emotional reaction, exposition becomes drama.
Sam, I thought I told you never to play.
Here's a piece of exposition delivered brilliantly, with emotion.
I see dead people.
Let's say you have to set up some plot, like an employee will need to take their boss's wife to dinner. Try it like this.
You're gonna be taking Mia Wallace out on a date. It is not a date.
A great way to feed the audience their exposition is by having a fish out of water character. Luke Skywalker's never seen the galaxy, just like us, so we learn while he does.
The weapon of a Jedi Knight.
Sam Neill's never been to Jurassic Park. He needs to have dinosaur DNA extraction explained to him just like we do.
Luca Brasi held a gun to his head.
In The Godfather, Kay's never met the Corleone family, so her boyfriend Michael can introduce her to everyone. Through Kay, we learn that Tom Hagen is adopted, that Freddy is a drunk, and that Luca Brasi is a dangerous hitman. It doesn't feel like exposition, because it is natural for Luke to ask questions about the Force, for Sam Neill to ask John Hammond how he created dinosaurs, or for Kay to ask Michael Corleone about his family's business.
That's my family, Kay. It's not me.
Yes, that old chestnut. But it's staggering how much TV and movies feel the need to tell. It's always going to be more powerful to show. Let's say a couple's relationship is on the rocks. It's this.
I just want to be left the hell alone.
Versus this.
Anna. Happy anniversary.
Let's say there's been a miscarriage. It's this.
I'm so sorry.
I didn't want to tell you like this.
Versus this. Let's say a character has lost their faith. It's this.
It's been a long time since I really prayed.
Versus this. Flatter your audience's intelligence, and they will always rise to the occasion. This leads us to my final and most important rule. Let's say you need two characters to establish that they share a long history. Here's one way you can do it.
I've been your best friend since we were 7 years old, Truman.
Or you could try this.
Remember that time I stayed up with you all night in your tent? Because you wanted to play North Pole? And I got pneumonia? You remember that? You were at school for about a month. You're the closest thing I ever had to a brother, Truman.
But let's look at a different way to do the same scene. Kenneth Lonergan's film, You Can Count on Me, is a masterclass in good writing. Every time I watch it, it just staggers me with its economy, its honesty, and its subtext. Consider the last lines of the movie.
Hey, Sammy. Remember when we were kids? Remember what we always used to say to each other?
Of course I do.
Remember when we were kids?
Think of how many movies we've seen that would have spelled out what Terry and Sammy used to say to each other. But this movie is too smart for that. Terry and Sammy both know what they used to say, so they don't need to say it at all. And we, the audience, are trusted to realize on our own that Terry and Sammy used to say, "You can count on me." This is truthful dialogue and the essence of good writing, moving text to subtext. So here's my primary rule. The best exposition is no exposition. This has been Raising the Stakes, and my name is, well, better to show, not tell.